My name is Brian Howley. I'm Chairman of Balbriggan District Historical Society. Today I welcome you to our virtual seminar commemorating 100 years of the anniversary of the Sack of Balbriggan and what happened then. Today we're going to start with 3 videos produced by Jim Walsh and Tom Coughlan, and they are with eyewitnesses or family members of eyewitnesses of what actually happened in the Sack of Balbriggan in 1920.
We're here in Mr. and Mrs. Hammond's gracious home at 10 Gibbons Terrace in Balbriggan at the kind invitation of Michael Hammond, who has agreed to tell us about his personal recollections of that fateful night of Monday the 20th of September 1920. Now, Michael, just before we actually hear your own personal story, can we just glance through for a moment or two through this album of photographs kindly presented by Jim Glennon to the Balbriggan Historical and Cultural Society. And as I already explained to you, it was based on photographs from the Daily Sketch and other newspapers compiled by Mr. McGowan, who owned the Gladstone Inn, now the Milestone Inn. Mm-hmm. You probably know most of the locations. Mm-hmm. And some of the people involved. For instance, that part of Clonard Street, who would have lived there then?
Johnny Randalls lived there.
Yes.
Yeah. And Joe Costello lived there.
Right.
Joe had a clothing business. He used to travel the country with a van, you know. That's what Joe was. Johnny had a shop, sold everything practically, you know.
Was Johnny related to Harry Reynolds, the cyclist?
Brother.
A brother?
Yeah. And Johnny taught us a lot about bicycles and things like that. I believe he was a good one himself, only for an accident he had, you know. He unfortunately ran into some man on the sideline one day racing, and you know what happened. But anyway, that's where Johnny lived, and Joe Costello, right in front of, that's the tan yard between them, like, you know. Mm. There used to be tubs and everything belonging to the tanners when I was a young lad. We used to go up into the tan yard and get chased, you know, that sort of a way. But that's who lived there anyway.
I believe at the time of the sack you actually lived in Clonard Street.
Oh yeah, up in the cottages at the top end of it. There was 5 of them set afire also. I've never seen them on any of the pictures. It was every morning, well, every other morning, he often wakened up to hear the doors getting banged in. There was a couple of chaps living in them that was members of the IRA, and they were looking for them, you know, but always had a way out, or they weren't there at all. And they set them afire in the middle. And you know the steps that's on the roofs? That's what saved the whole row, only for that whole row of cottages had been gone up. There was 20 of them, like, you know, only 4 of them got born.
Roughly, what age were you in 1920, if I may be so
8-year-old. 8-year-old.
8. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us roughly what happened to yourself and your family on that night, or what you remember?
Well, I remember going down the street with one of my sisters, going for a bucket of water down to the pump. Pump was down at the bridge beside Benny Cochran's. And we met Johnny Randalls coming running up the street. And Johnny says, "Where are you going, children? Go home out with that," he says, "and tell your mother the town of Balbriggan is going to be sacked or burned tonight," he says. "There's 2 men out being shot over in the bar." So I remember my sister telling him, "Well, I'm not going home, I have to get the water." And we went down, got the water, went home and told the mother. And, you know, the mother got worried about us. And anyway, I went to bed. That night, I wasn't thinking about the town or anything else, you know, what you be when you be a young lad. But I remember waking up with the terrible noise and shouting and glass breaking and doors getting banged in. And was told to get dressed real quick. It wasn't hard dressing me at the time, the bare feet and the pants. So anyway, down and we out the back way to the field. There was a field behind the houses, and the roaring and shouting and the shooting. Did you know these wing the cowboy bullets you hear now in the modern pictures? The air was full of them, like going, you know. And we were crossing the fields at the back of the houses on the far side of the street. The flames and smoke was beginning to come up. Of course, we were doing our best to get away. But I remember one particular incident we were going down the garden to the field. There was a girl from 2 doors below. They got burnt, like, you know. And she was standing on the old ash pit and she ran for her father. She was a big girl at the time. And the Budley, they used to call him. Oh, Budley, 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 she'd roar, where are you? But she was saying something else. I wouldn't like to say it now, do you know what I mean? And anyway, we went out across the fields and right on and across. Of course, we knew the route well, and up the Bulls Lane from Dublin Street, like, you know, from that side, like up along the river and up the Bulls Lane, up to a place now, I just can't think of the name of it at the moment, where Mick Fox lived anyway, the back of that house. And the fellas there was on the run, and some of the other men got a lot of hay out of the fields, and we slept along the ditches there for the night, like, you know. But anyway, if they had to cross the head that night and start shooting, that's across the canal, there'd be an awful lot of people injured or killed in the field, because the field, believe it, was full of people, do you know what I mean, crossing it, because there was desperate big families in that street at the time. There was 12 or 13 in our house, and every other house at 8 and 10 and 12, do you know what I mean? And you can imagine the crowd of people crossing the field and trying to get out, and women excited and everything, do you know? Well, my youngest sister was only 6 weeks old, so you can imagine the state my mother was in, trying to get away. But anyway, the shooting and banging was going on, and the roaring, something terrible, the noise of it, you'd never forget it, like, if you heard it, you know. But there was another thing, that there was a young horse in the field, and he was galloping up and down through the crowd. How he didn't kill somebody, it was a miracle, you know, one of Richardson's horses. But anyway, when they came back the next morning to the house, my father was out of taking out anything he could out of the kitchen, like tables and chairs, and I wondered, I thought it was very funny to see the furniture all out in the yard, you know. And it was only when we went into the house and went out through and seen the whole street, all the houses, the far side burned, and the ones below us, you know. A strange thing, we were standing in the kitchen, and this old man, Tom Tracy, lived 2 doors above us. And he walked in his shirt. He was a bit innocent, like, you know. And you know what he asked me father for on the whole street of her? Hey, Jack, says he, have you heard a match? I want to light the fire. Now, and he was stepping through burnt thatch and that, you know, it was blown about him. Things like that, you'd never forget them, you know. Looking at him, he's standing there, with the big bare feet and legs, and oh, God, it was gas that. Things like that happened, you know. But after, when everything, like, we went away for a week or so down to it was an aunt of mine, married, lived down in Silverstream. Do you know what that is? Down the Stamullen area, below Garmanstown, Silverstream. She was married to a whaleman, and he was living in a cottage, and we went down for a week or so. We got fixed up because my uncle's houses and grandfather's and aunts, you know, they were all burnt out on the far side of the street. We're trying to fix them up, but we were down there for the week having a great time. But when we came back, we had a great time going around pooching through the shops that was burnt, and the money was no big lumps of money like that out of the tills, and it all stuck together, silver and copper. You know what, it melted with the fires. And I remember getting one in particular in that shop. I don't know much would be in it, but it was twice as big as that thing there on the floor, you know. All the money melted. But we used to be searching for bullets and that, and it's unbelievable where the bullets were in people's gardens and everything. You know, these lads were all mad drunk, of course. And we were picking them up for months after. Clips of bullets, and the lads used to call them egg bombs. Now, I never seen any of them exploding or anything like that, but the big fellas in their teens and that used to take them off us and that when we'd find them, do you know? And they used to get the bullets and stick them in the side of the curb, and one fella would hold a nail with a string on it, and the other lad hit it with a stick, just to make the bang, and the brass would fly across the road, you know. Things like that used to be at, and put them in a fire just to hear them going off. But anything else after that, like, you know what I mean? I was only a kid at the time, but we used to be, before the war and the towns, we stopped in lorries outside a pub called Jem and Lewis. It was above, going up the hill, when you went round the corner by Durham's. There nearly was always a couple of lorries stopped there. It was a pub.
So Orion's pub is now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I nearly don't know who's in the pubs now, do you know, because they put no passing them.
Yeah.
But that was Jem and Lewis. A fellow by the name of Paddy Bock bought it after, I think, you know, years after. But they were always stopped there and sitting on the lorries outside. I suppose any of them that had business was in the pub. But we'd be shouting up by our riot, and you know, coming out of school, and then we used to be delighted, and lads were pointing the rifles at us, and some of the lads would throw us a few coppers, and you know what it was to get a penny in them days. Gee, it was great. We didn't dare use the penny was.
Can I just ask you, you mentioned, I think before, Bob Monks.
Bob. I remember poor Bob on the run, all right. He way up at the top of the large street, there was a bank. Richardson's house was there now, beside the old land, you know. And he got his breakfast there every morning from his mother for years. I remember now sitting beside him and the mother bringing it up to him. Bob was on the run. Now, where Bob lived, there was no way out the back way, the river and the big drop down like behind the houses, you know. And he always had to be out. He never was at home at night. And of course their houses wasn't burnt, strange to say. None of them were touched down there around Liberty Hall at all, you know, that they were all there. But Bob, every morning, that's a fact, his mother had to bring the breakfast up to him, sitting on the bank and pub. There was other few fellas lived below us, so they had a way out, like across the fields, like, you know, there was. But their doors was banged in every other morning, 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. I heard them myself getting bet in, like, you know. They never could catch them.
Did you ever hear anything about Jack Straw and his role in the sack?
No, I didn't. To be honest, I don't know anything about him, like, you know what I mean? You hear so many things, but there's an awful lot of things you hear that are only supposed to be, to be honest with you.
Yes, yeah.
And there's very little you can remember at 8 years old, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
The things you seen and heard, you'd never forget them because the life was frightened out of you, and I can tell you I was no brave guy when I was 8 years old. If you only knew me, I wouldn't look out the window in the dark, to be honest with you. And the sister brought me down that night just for company, you know, and I was more afraid looking around me going down the street. Nearly Johnny Renzel nearly frightened the life out of me coming up running. That's the truth. And that'll tell you. But them is just a few things I remember, like, you know, about that. Beside Kieran's. I'll tell you what happened there. You see, the one in between them, myself and my brother, now the Barney will tell you this, we were in bed. It was a terrible gale of wind blowing the Sunday morning. And her brother now, Mrs. Cochran's, that's Benny Cochran's mother, was going, the Barrett Morrissey they called him. He was going up to bring the cows home to milk them. And the blooming house fell just as he was passing it. And the yellow clay, you know, big lumps of yellow, came out and broke one of his legs. Now, only for that, the other two that was there empty, they'd be burnt also. You see, there was a division there, right in front of our house. And that stopped it. And that was it there. That was Bissett's and Coslow's and Hammond's. Right now, Bissett's, Coslow, Hammond, Kieran's, Hughes's, and the half house. Now, do you see this here?
Yes.
The Sean Mattis was up on that on the towns in the street. My uncle Sean, he was an ex-soldier, British soldier. There was many ex-soldiers lived in the street. The strange thing about it, one of the houses right between where they used to be banging the doors in every morning was another ex-soldier, do you know? They weren't long home from war at the time, after the 18 war. But the Sean was up there, and I believe the courses and languages on them born in his house, and he had been out fighting for them in France, do you know?
Yes,
you can just imagine it.
I can imagine it,
right? You know, that was it there. There was the grandfather Mattis's house. My mother's people were here there. And that was John Hughes's. My grandfather Hammond lived up there, and only Coslow, Paddy Bissett, Bizzard moved away out of that, and people with the name of Fannin came in from the bog. They went away to Skerries. Then as the Fannins are still in Skerries, like, you know. Yeah. That's who they are.
There's a photograph there, I think. There's another shot of O'Neill's cottages.
Yeah, that's the half house there now with the Shawns. That's the one he was up cutting down and on the tans in the street, you know.
Mm.
And that's that old place there now. At the time, only Costa had that as a bottle and rag place. That's the present Only's father. And then, of course, they all belonged to O'Neill, you know. But Mattis has got it after anyway, and they took the roof off it and knocked down the walls because they used to be bringing the horse and cars in that way, you know. The Sean and the John jars. But that was the pump hole. There was a pump in there at one time between them houses. And a gateway and a right away to Chapel Street. The people used to come over to get water there at that pump. Now I don't remember it, but the stone and that there, we used to be playing on it, you know. Mm. But when Castles bought all this, they had the field right up the back. They shut off that whole place, like, you know. Mm. When we young lads, we often cross it, and Josie be given out to his Robbie's father. That right away is not there anymore, go home out of that, you know. We used to think we could cross because it used to be a right away. But that's...
Just a pity we can't make out the people there, isn't it?
Well, I don't know them lads. The boots on them, I'd never had any boots.
Had you anything on your feet?
First pair I got when I was making my confirmation, 11-year-old. Never wore boots and that. And that's the truth. And I didn't know what I was walking on. My feet was that hard. Now that's the truth. Most lads were like that, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know who them chaps would be.
You went to school where? In Chapel Street?
Chapel Street, yeah.
And your teachers were?
Mr. Butler and Mr. Keeley and
Mr. Cullen?
Jack Cullen. Yeah. Poor old Jack.
For telling us.
Oh, you're quite welcome to them. It's just a few things I remember, like, you know, about.
Well, you're very good, Michael. Thanks very much for telling us.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Your recollections. Perhaps we'll have a further chat with you at a later stage.
Oh, sometime, yeah.
Well done.
If I'm here, or there.
I'm sure you'll be there. In the extremely cosy kitchen of the beauteous Kathleen McGillivary at 68 Drogheda Street, Balbriggan. And Kathleen, who is looking very, very sprightly indeed, has kindly offered to tell us of her recollections of the fateful night of the 20th of September 1920. Kathleen, what are your memories?
Well, Jim, as far as I can go back, and I'm sure I was about 7-year-old at that time, I do remember the sensation, and I do remember everyone screaming. There was 2 men being shot in Smith's Bar at that time. And everyone was shouting, oh, there's going to be trouble tonight, we better all get out. And like that, there was. To look from the landing window of our own back window in Dublin Street. Clonard Street was good and well flames. The flames were up everywhere then. At that stage, after they got the word in Gormastown camp, the 2 men were shot. There was lorry loads of tans, guns stuck out, quite filled up the town, and had no mercy on whatever they've seen and shot. Burned whatever they could get, and of course tried to get some of the fellas. But at that night they didn't capture anyone, everyone got clear. But it was an awful night for everyone, and everyone was getting away, everyone was running, pulling doors and banging and running for Hampton, which we did ourselves. As a child I was dressed and brought up the Market Green, and the crowd as we went along joined us until we got up to Hampton, to where Granny lived at that time. Mrs. Cleary, we have a photo too. And everyone was frightened, and when we got to the hill of Hampton, there was a great clear view of the flame in Balbriggan. The flames was everywhere. That's true, that night. So there was a great crowd and they were all well looked after, as Scrivenses owned Hampton at the time. Scrivenses owned the house and big house and the farmyard. So anyone that got there was made welcome and there was tea and everything made for them. So that night, where my father worked on Smith and Company's down on the banks, it was burnt because there were supposed to be some of the IRA lads working there. So they made pieces of that. That went up in flames. But they wanted to burn Smith and Company's factory. But somebody came out in Station Street and said, no, the man you're after works down in the banks. So anyway, everyone was, in the next morning, everybody was running with heaps of clothes and, law homes, and everyone was dispersed, and everyone was trying to get away. And the towns didn't stop at that. They were shooting the horses and the cars as they came down Dublin Street. They did. The cars, you wouldn't see a motor car coming to the town for shopping then. It was a horse and car. That was 1920. And the bang and the horse would fall. Oh, it was an awful, awful night. I do remember it, but after that then the towns was, those places, as you know and everyone knows, was built up well with compensation, all those pubs, but it was 2 or 3 years and maybe more before they got them all built. But they were well compensated, but it was a terrible night for the town of Balbriggan.
Where in Dublin Street were you living?
Do you know the 3 houses where Mrs. Cannon, Lily Andrew lives in one? The Goffs, I think, have the other, haven't they? Desi Goff's daughters. Desi bought this 3rd house, and the end one is Mr. Brophy, who's the bank manager. But that's where I was born and reared up to the time of the burning. In that house, yeah. In fact, my father was a holder on the banks, you see. So after that night, there was no work, there was everything. So that was the 20th, was it the 20th of September? And in January, the 4 or 5 of them, Holgers, Bernard White, my father's Willie Keegan, and John Burley, and Jim O'Brien, all made for America, because there was nothing here for them. Everything was black. So it was a sensation time, Balbriggan. So I don't know, Jim.
How long did you stay in Hampton?
Oh, that night, for weeks, I'd say, we were above, but up and down to Dublin Street. And I even remember them bringing the coal that was out in the shed in Dublin Street up to Granny's to keep a good fire going, because there'd be more sticks than anything else she'd have. So we'd always have coal in Dublin Street. Bag of coal was a £0.5 at that time.
You were telling me about the story of the scouter that you left behind.
Yes. You see, at them times, the bathers, we used to call them bathers or scouters, and they'd come from Cavan, and they'd come from any part of the country, and maybe they'd bring a half a dozen of eggs with them, and that would do them for the week, and then maybe 10 shillings to my mother for the week, and they'd have the room, and my mother would give them their meals and all. That was great good money extra then, you see. So poor Mrs. Smith, she wore a bonnet and cape, a real old time. I barely remember a big silk cape, and she'd say, she'd call me the baby and all this. But that night, with the excitement of everyone running, we clapped the hall door away and never thought no more about Mrs. Smith. And Mrs. Smith had the back room upstairs in Dublin Street, in that house. And my father was just saying, all night he was saying, God help us if that place is burnt and that one is gone. We'll never be forgiven for running away and escaping ourselves and leaving her behind. And as soon as it came daylight, it was September, it wasn't bad weather, down the hill of Hampton. There was no houses much around at all. And down the green, and the cottages, of course, that's on the green today, was there then. And foxes lived in the end one. And poor May Fox was at the door. And first thing she said to me, Father, "Oh, Willie, your house is burnt to the ground." And his legs were that shaky, he could hardly make the green corner. But when he got to the green corner, the three houses had the same as you see them today. So he turned the key, walked in, and she was standing at the fireplace, putting her bonnet on, you know the bonnets that old women used to wear, and she was getting ready to go to 8 o'clock Mass, or whatever time the Mass was. And she said to me, "Father, God, Willie," she said, "I thought there was someone sick during the night. I noticed the lamp was left lighted. You know the lamps with the globes, and that's what we all had then. There was no other way of lighting, only." "Oh," she said, "my God," I said, "You know, Mrs. Smith, thank God you're alive." He said, "Balbriggan was burnt last night." Well, part of it, he said, and "Oh," she said, "go there to the post office and send a word across a keel and get them to meet me. I'm going home." Oh, it was a terrible time.
And her name was Mrs. Smith?
Mrs. Smith. Now, I can't remember that well. Mrs. Smith from down Cavan or somewhere down. They'd come every. It was a great. They don't do it now. So they go around now in hotels and all the rest. But they were farmers that had been working all the year, and then they'd get a little break, I suppose, and think it was grand to get up to wash their feet in the sea.
Would they come for the sea baths as well?
Oh, there was sea baths. Yeah, there was baths down there. There's a bathhouse that's closed up now. That was a bathhouse.
Did you ever go into it yourself?
No, I never had bathed in, but was often in as a young one and down there bathing, but we'd never been there. But that's what those people that have come up and pay, maybe a shilling or 2 shillings and have a bath. That'd be great. Yeah.
You mentioned also something about Cannonburn, did you?
Cannonburn.
Yes.
Yeah, Cannonburn came the night the towns were. There was 2 houses now where Toll's has a shop. You know Toll's
On the
shop?
corner of Market Green.
Well, that was a private house. That was Canty's. They went to America. And Gilshan's. And he was a great. Gilshan was a great Sinn Féiner. And they knew that. They got the word from the lassies, the towns, you know. The towns is just like some of the camps. So there wouldn't be a girl, God, I shouldn't say lying on the air. It shouldn't be a girl if I've got a man on it for Gormastown Camp. But anyway, Gormastown Camp, that was the whole thing, the soldiers, and then when the towns came to it, the towns went, then the soldiers came. And they kept them, and Station Street and everywhere kept the towns and kept the soldiers and everything. But that night they were going up Dublin Street after they burnt the 2 houses at the corner. And Cannonburn came out on the middle of the road at the gate. And he had the blessed circle with the chalice in his hand. And the towns walked back. Keelty there was the guards, the police that was stationed here, like the guards now. They were with them all the time, and they knew everyone's houses. Because they were going to burn the 3 houses where I was Brophy's man. But one of the lads, one of our own policemen said, "Oh, those houses are all right." See, they took them to the serpent's bath. I'll be shot in a minute when I put down the air.
This evening, sitting in the very homely and relaxing cottage of Mrs. Daly, formerly known as B. Gorman, and her daughter Aggie. And we would like to hear Mrs. Daly's reminiscences of the Sack of Balbriggan. And we are looking at the moment, at an album kindly given by Mr. McGowan, who used to own the Gladstone Inn. Mrs. Daly, what do you remember of the Sack of Balbriggan as a young girl?
Well, I was on the road, on my own road here, when we heard the shooting. I was with my husband and my boyfriend at that time, and we came up home to my mother and father, and we said we heard shooting. went out to the doorway. We heard the shooting going on. We heard the lorries. And my boyfriend was going to go home. He wouldn't be let, my father wouldn't let him go home because in case the shooting was on the road. And stopped that night. We went to bed all right, but we couldn't sleep, none of us. We were all up and down. But the next morning, my boyfriend went in, Balbriggan, and he came out as quick as he went in. His father thought he was dead, and when he went up to the father was that delighted. He says, I'm going back out to where I stopped in Gormans. And the father said, well, I'm going with you, with your son. He did, and everything was all right. We wasn't told about who was shot until that evening. My father wouldn't let us out with our son when we heard who was shot. Okay. Father said, don't go in to Balbriggan anymore. As if we should have stopped here, you know, in the lane roadway all the time. So we heard no more. So my brothers then said to my father was very upset, I know. He said, Father, he said, if you are you, I take Mother and B. I was the only girl. Take them home to go up to Dublin. And he says, we'll be all right here. But I knew that one of my brothers was very fond. He was always with Miss Jenny Lawless. And I knew what was going to happen there. And I was worried about him. So was my mother. But my father it never struck my father until we came home after. My brother wouldn't leave. We wanted them to come. We'd all go into Dublin to see what was the place. But no, we only went ourselves. So there was a lot of the boys from the town did come. I think I told you that. And we went into Dublin for the few days. But the funerals then, of course, after the funerals we came home. So we wasn't so bad then. We could walk in and out, but occasionally when a lorry of the Black and Tans would be passing by, they'd either fire up in the air, you know, frightening them. So we were always afraid that you were going to get shot the same as poor John Gibbons and Jenny Lawless.
Did you actually know Jenny Lawless?
Knew him very well. Knew Jenny Lawless very well.
Yeah. And where was he living at the time?
I had a barber shop. Don't you know, I don't know who's in it now. Don't you know the bank now, the Allied Irish? Well, isn't that what you, yeah, on the square? Well, there's a gateway now. As far as I can now, do you see? I've lost Balbriggan. There was a little gateway to bring you into the back of the bank. Just and as you turn around now, if you can get me, can you? To turn around. And then there was a shop there, his shop, his barber shop. And Mrs. Lawless, the rest of two of them now, she set up a little sweet thing and cigarettes. It was only a bench. And then when everything was over, she made the whole place into a shop for themselves.
Would your father go in there to have his hair cut?
Oh, my father always went into to Jenny Lawless to get his hair cut. Always and ever. I think he was the only barber in the town, as far as I can gather. There was always Jenny Lawless.
Long before the Barber Smith and the Dozer McInerney.
For God's sake, if they wasn't known. I you talk, but they wasn't known.
What about John Gibbons? But he was a...
Poor John was a wild man.
In what sense?
He was, when I say wild, maybe I shouldn't say wild. He was a harmless young man. He'd give you a good laugh if you had a good chat with him, you know that. And I don't think he would have done any harm on anybody. He may be in the organisation Sinn Féin, but I don't think he'd do any harm.
What about, would you remember May Smith or her daughters who used to run that bar? May Smith, where the incident occurred on the September the 20th. It's now John Dee's on the square. Would you remember her or her daughters? It was a shop and a bar. She later sold out to Fagan.
I know there was Smiths.
Yeah.
But, no, I wouldn't say I'd know them.
Yeah.
Because you see, as I said, we were always kept at home.
I've heard great reports of your singing ability. I believe you sing for your supper on many occasions.
Sing for me, sir. Sometimes I have to sing for me breakfast.
Not that bad, is it?
Look at the big child looking at me here.
Would you care, for the purpose of tonight's little chat, to give us an air to actually sing the original ballad of the Sack of Balbriggan? We've never heard it.
Well, I've tried to do it. I'm 88 years of age and I haven't a voice like a young one, 18. Don't think that. Well, I'll try and give you a go over it anyhow.
Well done. Where are you going?
There you go. When I get me through. Oh, merciful God. Am I on camera?
There we go.
Give you a best to do. On a Monday in September, over 60 years ago, on the streets of old Balbriggan, people wandered to and fro. They were laughing, talking, shopping, enjoying life that autumn day. No one thought that growing near them, cruel death was on its way. Down they came upon Balbriggan, screeching lorries filled with tan, firing wildly, cursing, swearing, to destroy their evil plan. Soon the flames were leaping skywards. No one knew what way to turn. On the footpath, 2 men perished. All around the houses burned. But through battle, scared and mourning, dear Balbriggan did not fail. Phoenix-like put out her ashes, she proudly rose to tell her tale. tale of courage and endeavor, of hope to find her place once more, like a jewel shining brightly upon the lake of Erin's shore.
Well done. Lovely.
We hope you enjoyed those 3 presentations. At the beginning of the year, we had a lot of plans to do a lot of things. One of them was the schools, to make sure that the new generation, the next generation, understands what happened in the Sack of Balbriggan. So we visited all the schools and they took part in a competition for short stories, poems and artwork. And a lot of that is visible in the windows of a lot of business and shop owners. And thank you to them for that. We also produced our calendar, and thanks very much to Jim Lennon for the fantastic photographs that he allowed us to use for that. We also produced our beautiful medal, which is a limited edition, and I'd like to thank the Progressive Credit Union for their help in sponsoring that. Of course, we had a photographic exhibition planned. We had to change those plans a little bit, so we thank the Fingal County Council for help in the cost of producing those photographs, and we thank Jim Lennon for lending us the actual original photographs, and we thank the business owners and shopkeepers for allowing us to display them at this time. Thank you very much.